What happens when two of the most controversial figures in American politics sit down face to face for the first time since one of the most explosive firings in modern history? What happens when years of accusations, investigations, and public feuds finally collide in a TV studio with nowhere to hide? You're about to witness an interview that spirals so far out of control that the former President of the United States stands up and walks out, leaving the cameras rolling and the host stunned. Before we dive into this absolute train wreck of a conversation, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on. Because by the end of this, trust me, you'll have some strong opinions. The studio lights were blinding, almost oppressive. Donald Trump settled into the leather chair across from James Comey. The set was styled to look casual. 2 chairs angled toward each, other with a small table in between, but the tension in the air was anything but. Trump, in his trademark dark suit and red tie, already looked irritated, even before the cameras started rolling. Comey, taller and leaner, sat with his hands folded, face calm but eyes sharp. The producer counted down from 5. The red light blinked on. Comey opened with what sounded like a polite question. "Mr. President, thank you for sitting down with me. I know this isn't easy for either of us, but I think the American people deserve to hear us talk through these issues directly. Can we start with your decision to terminate me as FBI director? What was going through your mind that day?" Trump shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening. "Well, Jim, first of all, you're probably the only person who thinks this is hard for me. I've done thousands of interviews. I know how this works. And second, what was going through my mind? That you were doing a terrible job. The FBI was a mess under your leadership. A total disaster. Someone had to make the tough call." "A disaster," Comey repeated evenly. "Can you elaborate?" "Because by most metrics, the FBI was performing well. Convictions were up. Counterterrorism operations were effective. Morale, despite your claims, was strong." Trump jabbed a finger in the air. "See, that's exactly your problem. You live in this fantasy world where everything you did was perfect. The rank and file hated you, Jim. I heard from dozens, maybe hundreds, of agents who were thrilled when I fired you." "That's simply not accurate," Comey replied, his voice tightening. "I've spoken to many of my former colleagues. Some disagreed with me, sure, but the idea that hundreds celebrated my firing is false. Let's focus on your stated reason. You said it was because of how I handled Secretary Clinton's email investigation. Is that still your position?" Trump leaned back, spreading his hands. "It was a disaster, Jim. You gave her a free pass. Anyone else would have been prosecuted. Then you reopened the case right before the election, which some say helped me win. But that's beside the point. You were all over the place. The American people lost confidence in the FBI." "So," Comey pressed, "you fired me for being too hard on Clinton or too easy on Clinton?" "You've said both. I fired you because you couldn't do your job," Trump snapped. "And because you spent more time leaking to the press and writing memos than actually running the FBI. You leaked classified information." "Jim, you're a leaker and a liar." The words hung in the air. Comey didn't flinch. His voice dropped. "I did not leak classified information. The memos I shared contained no classified material. That's been confirmed. They documented conversations I found deeply troubling. Conversations where you asked me for loyalty and to drop an investigation into your national security advisor." "I never asked you for loyalty," Trump interrupted, his voice rising. "That's a total fabrication. What I said was I hoped we could have an honest relationship, which clearly you weren't capable of." "You asked me to let the Flynn investigation go," Comey continued. "You said, and I quote, 'I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go. He's a good guy. I hope you can let this go.' Those were your words." Trump's face reddened. "That's such a distortion. I never ordered you to do anything. I was expressing an opinion about a good man who made a mistake and was being destroyed by fake news. I have the right to express my opinion." "You do," Comey said evenly. "But when the President of the United States expresses that opinion to the FBI director about an ongoing investigation, it's not just an opinion anymore. It's pressure. It's influence, for personal reasons." "Personal reasons?" Trump shot back, his tone sharp. "Michael Flynn worked for me for what, 3 weeks? You think I was going to obstruct justice for a guy I barely knew? Trump shot back, his voice dripping with disbelief. Give me a break, Jim. This is your problem. You're so sanctimonious, so convinced you're some kind of moral authority that you can't see reality. You twisted a simple conversation into a crime. Comey stayed composed. I documented what happened because I knew there'd need to be a record, he said evenly. I've done this job a long time, and I know when something isn't right. When the president clears the room of the attorney general, the vice president, everyone, just to speak privately with the FBI director about an ongoing investigation, that's not normal. When he asks for personal loyalty, that's not normal either. There you go again with the loyalty thing. Trump's hand slapped the armrest. I wanted to know if you were on my team, or working against me like everyone else in Washington. That's not inappropriate. That's called being a leader. I had a right to know if my FBI director was loyal to the country and the administration, or another deep state operative trying to take me down. Loyal to you, or loyal to the country? Comey asked quietly. Because there's a difference. The FBI director's loyalty is to the Constitution, to the law, not the president personally. That independence is what protects our system. Trump waved his hand dismissively. That's a nice civics lesson, Jim, but in the real world, people have to work together. I needed to know if you were part of the solution or part of the problem. Turns out you were the problem, which is why I had to let you go. You let me go because I wouldn't drop the Russia investigation, Comey said, his voice hardening. You told Lester Holt on national television that you had this Russia thing on your mind when you made that decision. You told the Russian foreign minister and ambassador in the Oval Office that firing me relieved great pressure. Your own words contradict every excuse you've given since. Trump's face flushed red. I was being sarcastic with Lester Holt. The fake news took that interview completely out of context. And what I said to the Russians was a private conversation, illegally, leaked by people in my own government who were trying to sabotage me. So, you were being sarcastic about your reasons. For firing the FBI director? Comey asked, incredulous. That's your explanation? My explanation, Trump snapped, is that I had multiple reasons. And the Russia investigation, which was a complete hoax, a total witch hunt, was just one of them. But you know what? I don't owe you an explanation. I was the president of the United States. You worked for me. When an employee isn't performing, you fire them. That's how the real world works. I didn't work for you, Comey said, his voice sharp now. I worked for the American people. The FBI director serves a 10-year term specifically to insulate the role from political pressure. The fact that you saw me as your employee, someone who should be personally loyal, that's exactly the problem. Trump leaned forward, his tone low and dangerous. You know what your real problem is, Jim? You think you're better than everyone else. You think you're above politics, above the presidency, above accountability. You sit in your ivory tower judging people who actually have to make hard decisions, and then act shocked when there are consequences. Consequences for doing my job, Comey shot back. Consequences for refusing to drop an investigation because the president wanted me to. I lost my position. My reputation was attacked every day, and I watched the independence of the FBI get undermined. But I can sleep at night, because I did the right thing. The right thing? Trump repeated mockingly. The right thing would have been to tell the American people I wasn't under investigation. I asked you 3 times to say it publicly, Bassad, because it was true, and you refused. You let that cloud hang over my presidency. You let the media run wild with conspiracies when you knew I hadn't done anything wrong. You weren't personally under investigation at that specific moment, Comey clarified. But investigations evolve. They follow evidence. And given the number of contacts between your campaign and Russian operatives, given the intelligence we were receiving, I couldn't make a statement that might have to be corrected later. That's not how investigations work. Russian operatives, Trump scoffed. You mean the Russian lawyer who met with my son for 20 minutes about adoptions? Or the ambassador that every politician in Washington has met with at some point? You turned normal political interactions into some kind of espionage thriller, Trump snapped. Because you were desperate to take me down. Comey didn't flinch. Your son met with Russians who promised dirt on your opponent, he said flatly. Your campaign manager shared internal polling data with a Russian intelligence officer. Your national security advisor was secretly communicating with the Russian ambassador about sanctions, and then lied about it. Those aren't normal political interactions, Mr. President. Those are serious counterintelligence concerns. Trump threw up his hands. Paul Manafort, who I barely knew, was with the campaign for 5 minutes. His business dealings had nothing to do with me. Mike Flynn talked to an ambassador. That's what incoming administrations do. It's called transition planning. And my son took one meeting where nothing happened. No dirt, no deals, no anything. You took a few harmless meetings and built this massive conspiracy theory out of them. Did you know about the Trump Tower meeting before it happened? Comey asked suddenly. Trump blinked. What? The meeting at Trump Tower was with the Russian lawyer. Did you know about it before it took place? I just told you nothing happened at that meeting, Trump said tightly. So whether I knew about it or not doesn't matter. It does matter, Comey pressed. Because if you knew, if you approved it, then we're talking about potential coordination with a foreign power to influence an American election. So I'll ask again, did you know? I don't remember, Trump said quickly. It was years ago. 1,000 things were happening during the campaign. But even if I did know, and so what? Taking a meeting isn't a crime. You're trying to make something out of nothing, like you've been doing from the start. Comey studied him for a long moment. You don't remember if you knew that your son, your son-in-law, and your campaign manager were meeting with Russians claiming to have damaging information about Hillary Clinton from the Russian government? You don't remember that? I'm not playing your word games, Trump snapped. You want me to incriminate myself over something that wasn't even illegal? This is an ambush. This whole interview is an ambush. This is a conversation, Comey said calmly. One you agreed to have. If the questions make you uncomfortable, maybe that says something about the answers. Trump pointed a finger at him, his voice rising. You know what? I should have fired you on day one. Everyone told me to. They said you were a problem, but I gave you a chance. I thought maybe we could work together. Maybe you'd see that I was trying to make America great again and get on board. But no. You were plotting against me from the start. I was doing my job from the start, Comey countered, his tone tightening. And from our very first meeting, what made me uneasy was how you talked about loyalty and personal relationships when you should have been talking about independence and the rule of law. You treated the FBI like it was your personal security force. I treated the FBI with respect, Trump shot back. More respect than you deserved. But you repaid that by leaking, by undermining, by running to your friends in the media every time you didn't get your way. You're a snake, Jim. That's what you are. A snake. Comey's expression hardened. I never leaked classified information. I never ran to the media. What I did, after you fired me, after you lied about why and attacked my character on national television, was make sure there was a record, because I knew you'd deny everything. And I was right, wasn't I? You've denied asking for loyalty. You've denied asking me to drop the Flynn investigation. You've denied everything, except what you couldn't hide on camera. You twist everything. Trump's voice rose until it filled the studio. The crew shifted uneasily behind the cameras. You took ordinary conversations and turned them into evidence of crimes that never happened. You're just like every other Washington insider. You couldn't stand that an outsider won, that someone who didn't play by your corrupt little rules became president. So you tried to destroy me. I tried to do my job, Comey said, his calm finally cracking, anger flickering beneath the surface. My job was to investigate Russian interference in our election, and any possible coordination with your campaign. That's not political. That's national security. The fact that you couldn't separate your personal interests from the country's, that you saw a legitimate investigation as a personal attack, tells me everything I need to know about your fitness for office. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Trump stared at him, stunned and furious. My fitness for office? He said, his voice low but shaking with rage. You're going to sit there and question my fitness for office? I won the presidency! 63 million Americans voted for me. I rebuilt the economy. I rebuilt the economy, Trump said, his voice sharp. I strengthened our military. I appointed great judges. And you? You got fired for incompetence. Now you're peddling books and giving interviews just to stay relevant. Don't lecture me about fitness for office. Winning an election doesn't put you above the law, Comey shot back. It doesn't give you the right to pressure law enforcement, demand personal loyalty, or fire investigators who won't bend to your will. I fired you because you were bad at your job, Trump repeated, each word straining with anger. How many times do you have to say it before it becomes true? Comey asked quietly. Because we both know that's not why you fired me. You fired me because of Russia. You said it yourself on television. You told Lester Holt that when you made the decision you thought, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. Those were your words. Taken out of context, Trump muttered. Then provide the context, Comey challenged. Explain how it doesn't mean exactly what it sounds like. Trump hesitated, jaw tightening. Then he leaned back, forcing calm. The context, he said slowly, is that the Russia investigation was a hoax, a fake dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton, corrupt FBI agents trying to take me down. And you let it happen. You kept it alive even when you knew there was no collusion, no coordination, nothing. So yes, Russia was on my mind when I fired you. I was done watching my presidency get sabotaged by a witch hunt you helped create. The investigation wasn't based on the dossier, Comey said, his patience thinning. It was based on intelligence from our allies, on suspicious contacts and lies told by people in your campaign. I didn't enable anything. I followed the evidence, as any responsible investigator would. You followed a political agenda, Trump snapped. You, Mueller, the angry Democrats, you all wanted to overturn an election. 2 years, millions of dollars, dozens of ruined lives. And for what? Nothing. No collusion. The Mueller report said it. Comey's eyes narrowed. The Mueller report did not say no collusion. It detailed extensive contacts between your campaign and Russian operatives. It outlined your attempts to obstruct the investigation. The only reason you weren't indicted was because Justice Department policy forbids indicting a sitting president. That's a lie, Trump barked. Mueller said he couldn't establish conspiracy. That means no collusion, and you can't obstruct an investigation into something that never happened. You people twist everything. I care about facts, Comey said evenly. And the facts are that you tried to interfere with a lawful investigation. You asked me to drop the Flynn case. You fired me. You told your counsel to fire Mueller. You asked staff to falsify records about our meetings. Those aren't attacks. They're facts. You don't know my motives, Trump shot back. You're not a mind reader. Everything I did was within my rights as president. I had the authority to fire you, to discuss investigations. You're trying to criminalize normal presidential behavior just because you don't like me. Normal presidential behavior? Comey repeated, his voice hard. Is it normal to demand loyalty from the FBI director? To ask him to drop a criminal investigation? To fire him, then tell Russian officials it eased pressure? Which part of that is normal? Trump stood abruptly, looming over him. You know what's not normal? An FBI director who thinks he's more important than the president. Who leaks memos to the press to spark a special counsel probe? Who writes a book calling the president a liar? That's not leadership, Jim. That's betrayal. And in any other job, you'd have been fired long before. Comey stayed seated, his voice steady. I wrote that book after you fired me. After you went on national television and attacked my character. I had a right to tell my side of the story. If that makes you look bad, maybe it's because your behavior was bad. Your story is fiction, Trump spat. A fairy tale where you're the noble hero and I'm the villain. But the American people see through it. They know you're part of the deep state plot against a duly elected president. There was no coup, Comey said, his tone like steel. There was no deep state conspiracy, Comey said firmly. There were career law enforcement professionals doing their jobs, following evidence, protecting the country from foreign interference. The fact that you can't tell the difference between an investigation and a coup, the fact that you see accountability as an attack, that's the problem. Trump stepped closer to Comey's chair, his shadow falling across him. You want to talk about accountability? Fine. Let's talk about how you handled the Clinton investigation. You held a press conference, something FBI directors aren't supposed to do, laid out all the evidence of her crimes, and then said you weren't going to prosecute. You made yourself judge and jury. Where's the accountability for that? I made a decision based on the law, not politics, Comey said, unflinching. We didn't have evidence of intent to violate the statute. I explained my reasoning publicly because the situation was unprecedented. The American people deserved transparency. You can disagree, but it was decided on the merits. On the merits? Trump scoffed, dropping back into his chair. You gave her a pass because you thought she'd win. You didn't want to make an enemy of the next president. Then when you saw she might lose, you reopened the case to cover yourself. You played politics with the law. And now you've got the nerve to accuse me of interfering with justice. I reopened the investigation because new evidence emerged, Comey said through clenched teeth. We found additional emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop. I'd told Congress under oath the case was closed and I had to correct that testimony. It wasn't about politics. It was about honesty. 11 days before the election, Trump cut in. Real convenient timing, Jim. The timing wasn't my choice, Comey replied evenly. The evidence appeared when it appeared. What was I supposed to do, hide it? Wait until after the election and be accused of covering it up? I made the decision I thought was right, knowing I'd be criticized no matter what. Trump shook his head, a bitter smile curling his lips. You're unbelievable. Everything you do, you wrap in this holier-than-thou language. Just doing my job. Just following the evidence. But somehow, every decision you make hurts your enemies and helps your friends. That's not integrity, Jim. That's politics with better PR. Who are my friends? Comey shot back. Who exactly did I help? Hillary Clinton lost the election, partly because of my decision. You won the presidency. How did I benefit from any of this? You've got book deals, Trump said immediately. Speaking gigs, you're a celebrity on the resistance circuit. You've made millions trashing me, pretending you're some noble martyr for justice. That's how you benefited. I wrote a book about ethical leadership, Comey said, his tone turning cold. I gave speeches about the rule of law. I did that after you fired me and destroyed my career. You act like I planned it, like I wanted the spotlight. I wanted to serve my full term and retire quietly. You took that from me. I took away your ability to undermine my presidency, Trump corrected. And you know what? It was one of the best decisions I ever made. Should have done it sooner. My only regret is listening to people who told me to wait. Your instincts, Comey said quietly. Your instincts told you to fire the person investigating your campaign. Your instincts told you to demand loyalty. Your instincts told you to obstruct justice. Maybe your instincts are the problem. Color rose in Trump's face. Don't talk to me about obstruction, he snapped. I had the legal authority to fire you. Every constitutional scholar, even the ones who hate me, agrees. The president can fire the FBI director for any reason or no reason at all. That's not obstruction. That's executive authority. Having the authority doesn't make it right, Comey countered. If a police chief fires a detective to protect his friend, that's still obstruction. The power exists, but using it corruptly is a crime. Corrupt intent, Trump repeated mockingly. And how exactly do you prove that? You read my mind? Peek into my soul? That's your whole problem. You people think you can invent intent and prosecute thoughts. It's insane. We prove it the same way in every case, Comey said evenly. By looking at the facts, the timing, the statements, the pattern of behavior, and in your case, the evidence of corrupt intent is overwhelming. You asked me to drop an investigation. I refused. You fired me. You admitted on television that Russia was on your mind. You told Russian officials it relieved pressure. That's not reading minds. That's evidence. Trump leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You want to know what was really on my mind when I fired you? I was thinking about how you were destroying the FBI's reputation, about how you'd become a political actor, not a cop. Every day you stayed was another day of embarrassment for the country. That's what I was thinking. Then why, Comey pressed, did you tell Lester Holt it was about Russia? Why tell the Russian foreign minister that firing me relieved pressure? Why ask me repeatedly to announce that you weren't under investigation? Every move you made had one goal, protecting yourself from the Russia probe.